Hi, and welcome to this episode of Things That Matter. I'm Brian Brodersen, and it's great to be with you today. And I'm really excited about our guest here in the studio with us today. This is Aaron Campbell, and Aaron is the pastor of Antioch Christian Fellowship in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and right in the heart of the city. Aaron,
Yes,
welcome.
yes. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you.
Awesome.
So this, just everything that you described to me off camera about kind of what's happening with your church is everything that just gets me super excited.
Awesome.
So let's talk about what the vision is of the ministry, like where God has situated you. I mean, it sounds like a very extraordinary opportunity that God has given you right there in the middle of all kinds of different cultural situations.
For sure. Yeah, so we're in University City, and it's interesting because if there's some intellectual achievement from UPenn or from Drexel, then it's University City. If there's a heinous crime, then it's West Philly. So It's really University City, West Philly.
Okay.
And we're right in the shadow of the skyscrapers of Center City, so we're just smack dab in the city. Interesting place. It's kind of the intellectual mecca of the Delaware Valley because of the universities. It's actually the most Islamic part of the city.
Interesting. Wow.
And then because you have the universities really just dumped on top of West Philly, you still just have your blue collar and then really just ghetto, rough, the wild, wild West Philly. Everyone's just kind of cohabitating, with this kind of tension in the air.
Yeah.
But everyone's so busy just coming and going, if you will. But it's a great opportunity just to get to really show the love of Christ and to declare truth. In a place that's just drowning in the information age and coming to champion relativism. You know?
So how did you end up? How did you come to Christ?
Wow. Well, I grew up in a single parent home in inner city North Jersey, right in the shadow of New York. Got into the University of Pennsylvania because I was just determined at a young age that I went to a prep school and saw the way they were living and determined at a young age that if I work hard, I can make money. Mm-hmm. And just a humanist, raised as a humanist, I can make some money and then my children won't have to grow up struggling. Yeah. Got into the University of Pennsylvania, achieved what the world said would equal happiness. But then as a pre-med student there, when I just hit the equal sign, it was all just chasing wind. I found it to be a frustrating, paralyzing vanity. So then I realized that the material wasn't going to do it, so I began a spiritual search. But I was so anti-Christian that I considered the answer could never be there.
Now, why was that?
I had seen so much hypocrisy in the church. And really, just like everyone else, I was gorged. I was on a malnourished diet of hearsay. Yeah. Average person in the world, making all of their conclusions off what they hear, History Channel, different cults or what have you, and not researching anything. Add that to the hypocrisy, and really I didn't want to find the truth in that because I wanted to be the Lord of my own life, to really look at it. But I went through about 9 different worldviews before coming to Christ. Mm-hmm. And because I was a lover of ancient history, when someone came along and showed me Bible prophecy and showed me the book of Daniel and showed me all of the world empires I had studied in Daniel, that opened me up to wanting to hear the gospel. Wow. And then when they showed me the messianic prophecies, because as a science major, I wanted more than just good, warm feelings. I needed to see something factual. Yeah. And when I saw that, then I heard the gospel for the first time at 22 years old and made a radical conversion. Wow. And went from being just a known hedonist to someone who just was proclaiming to be madly in love with Jesus.
Wow. That's great. So you get saved. You probably graduated by then, or you just
graduated about a semester later.
Okay, and then are you continuing on with education at that point, or what do you do after that?
No, actually, I received a calling in a dream to go into the pastorate. Yeah. Immediately told God, I'm only saved for about a month. Told God, you would never want me to be a pastor. I'm from a broken background. One Aaron is enough on planet Earth. Let me be an evangelist. I can just kind of show up and before anyone gets to know me, leave. Yeah. And God just confirmed that it was pastoring. And the church began in our living room with 3 people in the very neighborhood where I was running around as a Penn student, as a hedonistic Penn student who was running through the ghettos because I was raised in the inner city. So I'm a student by day, running through the ghettos by night. caught up in the drugs and the fast life and what have you. And then the Lord would allow me to pastor and begin a Bible study in the very neighborhood where I had done so much. To this day, I can drive by corners where we will do outreaches, and I can remember some things I'd done in the dark of the night.
Yeah. So, what year was that, or how long ago was that?
This was 20 years ago. So this was 96.
Yeah, 20 years ago. Wow.
96.
So, okay, fast forward. Here we go. 20 years later. Now, is the church that you started in your living room? Is that the church you're pastoring today?
It is.
It's the same one.
We went from my living room to the second floor of kind of a Sanford and Son thrift store, still in the University City area.
Yeah.
Then the area was going through such gentrification that it became the most expensive place. But whenever we had money, we're a thrift store church, we would take the money right into the community. We would set up fish fryers right on street corners, go into the worst neighborhoods and fry hundreds of pounds of fish, give out free fish sandwiches, and just preach Christ.
Yeah.
So we had no money, so we started a series of prayer meetings. We actually found a building. We're told the building would be $360,000 as a down payment because it was a $1.2 million building. And I remember saying to myself as I met with the bankers, you might as well enjoy this meal they're paying for because you'll never have $360,000. And coming back to the Calvary Chapel distinctives, I went to the church and I said, we're not going to do a thermometer. We're not going to do any fundraisers. We're going to pray, and I won't even tell you the amount that we need if God wants us there. We started having prayer meetings every Friday night. And would you know it, that someone comes in the door months later, knew nothing about anything. We had $60,000 in savings. This person pulls me aside and said, I anonymously want to give a donation. I don't want anyone to know my name. I've been traveling across the country looking for a church to give it to. It is for $300,000. It was the exact amount of money we needed to buy the 12,000 square foot building where we are today, which is right in the middle of the city on the main artery.
Amazing.
Yes.
I mean, that's like a modern day miracle. I mean,
And it's coming back to the distinctives and the stories of your father-in-law. It showed me that could happen. Just not putting God in any boxes, honoring His word, striving to give room for the Holy Spirit, and knowing that's our Lord.
Yeah, and when I say miracle, I mean, obviously, people just don't show up on your doorstep and give you the exact amount of money that you've been praying about.
And I gave it back to her.
Yeah.
She was a young woman. I said, I promise I won't share who you are, but I wanted to make sure she wasn't a person just giving out of guilt, or maybe she was trying to buy God's love or what have you.
Yeah.
I gave it back to her. I said, you pray 3 days, I'll pray 3 days. Yeah. She called me in 3 days. She said, I already knew that it was the church. She said, I just prayed 3 more days anyway. And that was it.
That's amazing. So what's the makeup of the church?
We are very multicultural. We have people from all different socioeconomic backgrounds. So we have your Wharton grads, scientists, people that work on Wall Street, and then we have, ex-offenders, college students, just West Philly folk. And then with the universities, you get people from all over the world. So it's really a very diverse congregation.
Yeah. So I heard about another sort of a miraculous sort of a thing with your second campus. You got a building on actually on site at Temple University,
on Temple's
right?
campus.
And so how'd you get that? I mean, that doesn't happen every day that you that you get a building on a university campus.
Can I just share that God's grace towards sinners is amazing, but we're His elect and we're His own, we're His. So after bringing Ravi Zacharias to Philadelphia 3 years ago, this person had a campus ministry in a building that was all paid off, about 75 years old, no successor. And he'd heard of the work we were doing on the college campuses, and he just wanted to give it to someone who he believed would carry that on. Well, he heard about the Ravi event at University of Pennsylvania. We ended up meeting. He sat and talked, and he said, I have no successor. I've been praying for one, and I believe you're the successor, and gave Antioch the building for $1. So this was about 2 years ago, and now that's our second campus. One of our elders is heading that ministry, and that's just to target Temple students.
Yeah. That is amazing. Actually, I was just in Europe a week ago, and one of the guys there, a friend of mine, had a similar story in that he got an amazing building in the heart of the city where he's been ministering for 15 years, and he got it for £1.
Wow! Wow!
So yeah. Well, I just love those kinds of stories, and sometimes I think that we can forget. we can get all into our arguments and our apologetics and all of that. It's all great. I love all of that, and we're supposed to do that. But sometimes we can forget that there's really the living God. The earth is His, everything in it, and He can just step in and do stuff that we'd never even dream.
100%.
Yeah,
yes.
And you're living it. You're experiencing it.
By grace, just trying to stay out of His way, and just want to continue to finish strong.
So what's the vision? I mean, obviously it's pretty clear. God's got you where He's got you, and He's got all of these different sort of groups of people. And you mentioned the Muslim population in the area is the highest in the region. Is that what you said?
Definitely highest in the city. Definitely highest in the region.
Yeah.
We have outreach with them. And it's not just even African Americans who are Muslim. I mean, we see whites who are Muslim, and then a lot of West Africans and Middle Easterns, Lebanese, Malayans, from all over. So we have the Sunnis, we have the Wahhabists, which actually is the most fundamentalist.
Yeah.
And they actually are right down the street from our church, where they actually play Bin Laden lectures in their convenience store as we speak.
In their convenience store.
As we speak, right down the street from our church. So we're engaging them regularly. Yeah. We've seen some great conversions. And it's just something we're always in prayer about.
Yeah, so when you say African American Muslims, are they black Muslims or are they traditional Muslims?
So as opposed to Nation of Islam.
Nation of Islam, yeah.
Sometimes it could just be the assumption that when you see a strong Muslim group, that it's African Americans who've converted to Islam.
Yeah.
While we do have that in West Philly, there are also just as many who are from Africa and from the Middle East. Okay. So it's a mix.
Yeah.
And you see them, really, they kind of say your most fundamentalist ones actually begin to want to take on the look of Muhammad. So you'll see them dyeing the beard orange. They're chewing the same type of wood stick that it says in the Hadith that Muhammad chewed, and the garb. They begin to look like someone from the 7th century.
Yeah. Wow.
So you do see that right in the middle of West Philadelphia.
Yeah. So give me one example, if you could, real quickly, of a conversion out of that.
Sure. There is a member of our church named Troy. I met him when he still had sight in one eye. He was shot in the other eye. He was blind in one eye when 52nd and Market was declared the most deadly street corner in all of Philadelphia, where even there would be drive-bys during the vigils for people who were murdered. We went and fried hundreds of pounds of fish right on the corner, about 5 blocks up from our church. Met him there because he was the kingpin of that area, and the little kids on the roofs who would look with binoculars alerted him that there's some church group setting up fish cookers. He admitted later he was coming to actually flip our fryers over. But he and I began speaking. I just began sharing my conversion with him. He ended up getting locked up on major kingpin charges, got saved while he was in prison. But while in prison, he was one of the highest regarded Muslims, converted while he was in prison. And that's called shirking. And he was surrounded where they actually were going to do him in. And he was miraculously delivered because he had reached the level of writing and meeting with some of the highest level imams in the country, from Chicago to Detroit, got saved in prison, and then as soon as he came out, he'd lost his sight right while he was in prison, so went blind, and to this day he's blind. Came to our church and shared that it was from the seed that I had planted in him, and he's blind, so he couldn't see my face, but he came to Antioch and knew if he heard my voice that he would know who it was, and I hadn't seen him in 7 years. And Troy now walks around trusting the Lord because he doesn't know who may try to come after him because he's such an outspoken Christian. But that is our most radical conversion story of Islam. And he still walks the streets and shares Christ with Muslim, with whomever will listen, just with his walking stick.
Amazing.
So
amazing. So, Aaron, as we wrap things up, you sound pretty excited. You sound encouraged by what the Lord's doing, and one of the things that I feel is really important, we're kind of living in cultural chaos. I think most people would agree with that. Some people think it's utopia, but, I think we think it's cultural chaos. But what should our demeanor be in relation to this? I mean, sometimes I feel like, the church is sort of just wringing its hands and just sort of like, okay, well, let's just hold on until the rapture comes, and then we're out of here. This place is, just already, in their minds, it's kind of already over, But it seems to me like there's still a lot to do, and God could easily just step in and do some really powerful stuff. Is that kind of your take on things?
100%.
Yeah.
I love Ezekiel 3:15. Ezekiel has this message, but before he even goes with the message, he went to the river where the captives were, and he sat where they sat. And we look at how many groups there are today. We look at the LGBT community. We look at Black Lives Matter. We look at Blue Lives Matter. We look at White Lives Matter. We look at all the isms. And it's really incumbent upon us as believers to you become that person. I mean, Alan Redpath even shared that. You don't just minister to the guy on Skid Row, you become him.
Yeah.
We become that person. And the church is starting to very much in a lot of ways. And believe me, it's only by grace that I feel I'm able to have an insight to keep my heart as biblical as possible. But, here's the person on the side of the road, and the Levite and the priest just walked by, and I'm sure they had a sermon, and in their mind they had verses and all types of proverbs they could apply to that person. But who's picking that person up and putting them on their animal? And, the harvest is plentiful, and all of these different groups, these are not Goliaths. These are people. These people protesting and marching and even hating us.
Yeah.
I was once someone that hated the church, but I was the neediest one.
Yeah.
So it's about really reaching them and remembering the rock we've been hewn from.
Yeah.
And putting away religion. It's so easy. The leaven of the Pharisees runs deeper than in all of our hearts. We have to continually do fumigating.
We do. Yeah, we do. Do you feel that where you are and just looking at the people around you, do you sense that there is an openness to the gospel when it comes in its purest form, without all the trappings of, well, the church did this and, those Christians did that and they voted for putting all of that aside, if somebody's just faced with Jesus and the gospel, you feel like there's an openness?
I do. I think that when we are checking our heart to make sure that we are truly coming alongside and love, really running our hearts through 1 Corinthians 13, rooting out any love that's religious, thereby not spiritual anymore, that there is an openness. The college students, people are afraid. There's a lot going on, and people are afraid. They don't have answers for life's biggest questions. Yeah. So I would say that even if there's hostility up front, there's people's walls and mechanisms, but in the LGBT community, in the Islamic community, there is an openness when we are full of the Spirit, and that love is there. Yeah,
I mean, this is the world that the apostles went into. It's very similar in many ways. I mean, obviously there's differences, but I think morally and spiritually it's very much like what they went into. And they were convinced that, as Paul said in Romans 1, that the gospel of Christ was the power of salvation to everyone who believed. And they were not intimidated by what they were faced with. They knew that this was the answer.
Amen.
And so,
amen. Yeah.
If we know that and live that and preach that, God can do great things.
I agree.
Yeah, and He's doing them there.
And doing them here as well.
Yeah,
So, awesome.
Aaron, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
All right, man.
Awesome.
God bless you.